2020. She was like the teacher in school you hated, but when you look back, you realized you learned so much in her class. Those are the teachers that are hard to forget. And at the close of January 2021, I invite you to chew on the lessons 2020 taught you, so you won't have to repeat the class. But should you have to retake the test, you'll be ready. Let's get into episode 27, shall we? This is Motherhood Unmasked, the podcast for real talk about the challenges moms face. I'm your host, Vanessa Harris, but mama, you are the hero, so leave your mask at the door. We're all friends here. Hey there, Mama Bear. Vanessa here with compassion, candor, and clarity for you, the mom battling overwhelm and craving real talk. And girl, I am so glad you're here. By the way, when I call you girl, it's a term of endearment, as in short for girlfriend. If you're a regular here, you get that, but I clarify in case it's your first time hearing the show, and welcome, by the way. But I clarify so you don't take it as me demeaning you as a woman. It's precisely because of our shared struggles and triumphs as moms that I feel connected enough with you to dispense with the formalities. Anyway, I think we can agree 2020 wasn't the kind of year where you say, well, that happened, and move on. It changed you in some way, dare I say, many ways, you personally, but also in your approach to motherhood. And on the mom front, I think there are 3 concerns common to all moms, and Miss 2020 messed with all 3 of them. So let's go through the list in a countdown type of style, and I'll start with number 3, which is education. Where and how our kids get educated is something always on our radar, and like it or not, the where and how was on you last year. Overnight, you became the teacher, the teacher's aide, the counselor, the tutor, or all of the above. But I hope after the shock of it all, you recognize the opportunity to see how your child learns best. Maybe you were surprised to find out school was overwhelming to your child. As long as he hears the material explained and can see examples on the screen, he's good. Having other kids around actually distracts and slows him down, so he thrived learning online. But maybe you received confirmation your daughter must learn with peers in a structured setting. She needs classmates, routine, and that classroom pace to stay motivated and on track. In any case, 2020 taught you to cater to your child's educational needs, not social norms. Maybe it meant keeping your child virtual even when the face-to-face option resumed because she excelled at home. Maybe it meant buying manipulatives to help your son understand math because you discovered he's a kinetic learner, so he needs to touch things to understand concepts. But the nuggets you learned about how your kids learn best weren't just intel to help you survive 2020. They're gold that will serve them lifelong as you help them appreciate how they learn best. So that if and when they return to school buildings, you both know how to supplement their education for optimal success. Because let's face it, the education system as it exists now is one size fits all. And I will say this until every mom gets it. That's under the sound of my voice. Your child is not like everyone else, so don't treat them that way. All right, let's get to number 2, which we'll just call activities. I really wouldn't be surprised if you had a minor, maybe even major, meltdown when you realized all the activities you've been shuttling your kids to for years were shut down or severely restricted last year. If you're like many moms in the U.S., you figured out how to schedule every minute of your child's day, whether it was for your sanity or for scholarship opportunities, or because that's what all the moms did at your school. And I get it when it comes to teens. I have 2 basketball players in my house, and especially during this pandemic, getting to go to school for practice was a sanity saver for them. But 2-year-olds, honey, toddler sports, That is some of the most comical stuff I've ever experienced. But last year you learned plain old play and creativity works wonders. No competition or medals involved, just going in the backyard to pretend play soccer or shoot on a mini basketball hoop, use chalk and draw art on the sidewalk, or play with the Orbeez that she harassed you for 2 years ago. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my daughter. Never mind, let me come back. The point is, you saw how complicated you made your life with all the activities you'd scheduled, and Miss 2020 taught you to keep it simple, sister. Am I saying activities and sports are bad? No, ma'am, not at all. With the prevalence of obesity in America increasing, we need our children active. But active and having every second of your life scheduled are two different things. There's something to be said for coming up with ways to entertain yourself. Something to be said for good old throwing the football in the backyard, and for the art of stillness. Who knows what your child could come up with, what they could create if they were still for a moment. My kids stick to one sport or activity, and that's by design. And while my daughter is in between activities, she's been creating games left and right. I wouldn't be surprised if the child ended up working for Hasbro someday, or better yet, started her own game company, because she's made up numerous games that we actually enjoyed playing, made them up from scratch, or she modifies the rules of existing games. We would have never known that was in her if, for years now, we hadn't built breathing room into our schedule. And that brings me to the number one thing I think all moms learned in 2020. I don't know if you'll guess it, but I'll just go ahead and share it. It's keeping it real with your kids. Whether you wanted your children to know or not, they figured out you don't always have it together. Your kids saw you, like mine saw me, unravel under the increasing demands and restricted movement, and you had to confess it was a hard year for you too. You had to drop the mask and admit you don't have all the answers. You can't be there for everybody else all the time, and that the state of the world is a lot worse than you let on. There were events that went on last year, even so far this year, and we're just getting started, that you couldn't downplay. You had to discuss them and give room for your children to ask questions and express their thoughts on those matters. And that should never go away. In episode 15, I talked about you being your kid's first and best teacher, and I stand by my statement. Going forward, you're still your child's best advocate when it comes to making sure their educational needs are met, teaching them the value of living a less cluttered life, and creating space to share both their honest feelings and their perspectives on cultural issues. Bottom line, Miss 2020 taught you the importance of something I'm always telling my kids. Keep the baby and throw out the bathwater. How to keep the main things, while letting go of what no longer serves you, so you can live your life even under the most extreme circumstances. And that brings us to the segment of the show called Homework, the work a woman does to build her home and family. This week's homework is pretty simple. Talk with your kids. Talk with them about what they discovered about themselves with regard to 1, how best they learn, 2, the type of schedule they'd like when things open back up, and 3, their ability to drop the mask in favor of authenticity. I have a feeling their answers might surprise you. Hey, listen, if you're on Instagram, connect with me at Motherhood Unmasked Podcast. I would love to hear from some fellow mama bears in my DMs, so I'll see you there. And remember, when it comes to you being the mother of your children, you are the woman for the job. Take care. Thanks so much for joining me today. This podcast only works if I'm serving you well. So if you have any questions or ideas for topics that you would like me to cover, please let me know. You can leave me a message by heading over to vinelifefaith.com and clicking on the podcast tab. That's vinelifefaith.com/podcast. Motherhood Unmasked is brought to you by Vine Life Faith, where we're breaking negative cycles and building healthy community through connection with Christ. vinelifefaith.com.